Then we pass this dynamic to us to use before its third item. The third one we haven't used yet. Let's go find horizontal. It's very much like the strength process of dissolving. Then you can input a variable value into this in the particle. Example, edit input, then match with this interface strip. Do a match. I need to control the intensity of this interface adjustment. And then, after control, let's add another layer on this foundation like this in the grid. Bring up this texture. Next, we're going to use such an original interface effect here. And then do a subtraction. We aim to achieve a printed edge result. To subtract. It subtract means subtraction. The result we have now still has a grayscale. See, you go through there are areas with gradients. We need it to yield a very sharp result. So we can use the following node. It's a new node called flow. Let me explain what flow means. Let's see if there's any effect here. No effect here means the flow is, if this value of mine between 0 and 1 can have decimals. If this value is 0.5. So after the calculation of the floor, after his calculation of the floor, he directly got a 0.
Ring ding, today's result of 99 is 0, and getting 0.01 results in 0. If it is 1.1, the result he gets is by analogy. Everyone should understand its principle, right? Flow, as the name implies, means I am on the floor. The floating range between 0 and 1.
Bye.
As long as it's greater than 0 and less than 1, the result it produces is always 0. That's the meaning. Then there's another called seal. This is, it means heading towards the ceiling, which is the opposite of the floor. Within this range, this is 0, this is 1. The result it gets tends to be 1. Float tends towards 0. CL37. Ceiling. So to ensure its result is between 0 and 1, we give it a clamp. Clamp means clip. I set it between the default 0 to 1 because we need a maximum result. It should be either black or white. No need for it to be more than 1 or less than 1. And then we need to do this dissolving yield a result whose effect we can't yet see. Give it the dissolved outcome. Multiply to alpha on this side, right? We need to multiply it with his alpha, multiply by the output of alpha. So we need to take into account that the solubility calculation above and the one below are mutually exclusive. We need to make pairwise choices. So once we encounter a choice situation again, we need to give one, which is what we talked about before.
Yes. Switch selector.
Not this one. This switch is a dynamic toggle that can also be dynamically controlled inside the purple material sphere. Let's call it horizontal integration. If it is, then let's start it. If not, let's pull the results below over. So it is either yes or no. By default, it is no. We are force. Force is on the bottom left. Next, moving forward, we give her another switch. What's it called? Whether to enable dissolution. Do you want to dissolve or not? First of all, you're assuming I'm in this. Do you want to dissolve? Need to dissolve. Go this way. No need to dissolve. We just need to input a value of 1 and then bring their chosen result into this punishment. That's the choice. Then I'll explain to everyone why. Turning back here, you can't see him. A change in dissolution, right? So actually, we can add a debugger here at the debugging node. Let's not add a time for no
Time and sa.
time and sign combination. Scene, we all know, is such a curve, right? Up and down in the same curve. So if you don't specify time by default, it's like saying this to me. I don't have time. This is equivalent to the value of time. Time. Let this sign push it to move up and down along this track. If he is not pushed by time, then he can only at a 0, 0 position, so it's black. Alright, it rises between 1 and negative 1.
Up and down. When it comes to time, once created, it starts from 0 and keeps calculating upwards. That's how it continuously starts to increase. Okay, once we have that, we pass it on. Punish us. Let's replace this thing first. Let's see if there's any change. Hey, we see there's this dissolving change, right? So let me give another one. I'll try to increase its strength. So I'll multiply a value on my side. It looks more obvious. Let me see. Multiply by 30 and see. It feels like a fairly complete dissolution process, right? There's also this change in pace, right? So I think this is almost it. So we are here. Also make another switch. I'll keep this thing and let them make another choice. This is called enabling debugging and is mainly used for debugging. Turn on debugging. By default, force is off. If it's off, let's connect this. Once selected, if activated, it appears here. Hold on to that. Then we frame this as horizontal. Unseal. We're going here by the Lizifa heater. Solve a puzzle map and then I'll copy it. This is called ink splatter. Remove the sorghum. The model remains the same. We're just changing a material, ink and light blade material. Create another material, self-cutting heat sphere. Sweep across material regeneration, come over, power on the machine. Whether to enable dissolution, it should be turned on, and whether to enable lateral dissolution, it should be enabled. So we'll start over here. I'll start a debugging session. No effect, right? Don't start yet. Let's change the stickers. we use this texture, and then because of the repetition we adjust it a bit. Let's turn back and throw this material ball into the scene to take a look first. Seems like the position is not quite right, isn't it? Let's adjust the position. Okay, I've roughly adjusted it. This curve I've summarized based on the situation of my material ball just now. It looks roughly like this. And then I think it's also the dissolution of that square texture map that should follow mine. The direction of the sweep, the direction of the bow swing also has a certain impact. I've added this small detail.
How do I add that?
And then let's panel over to panels.
Same settings as above.
That 1.5, and then in the end also add it up.
These two results are added to this table.
Go on the quadrilateral contact diagram, and then this controls the time, this controls the direction below, and this controls another direction. And then specifier 0, 0, specifier 0, 0, apply it, and then we see it should be its velvety texture also came over. So adjust its vitality and color here.
It feels especially dark.
Adjust its alpha curve. It's a bit too grand. Basic colors are essential. At first don't go too deep, meaning try to see a bit of the texture of the sticker itself. The pace of melting must be fast. First and slow, fast and slow. Pay close attention. You must follow that rhythm. I have already covered the offsets of U and V dynamically in the front. Check the settings, everyone. U and V offset. These two curves. Oh. If V didn't get cheaper, then it's you got a little bit cheaper. Then add the part that was swept on the floor to it. Add it to our movements. Create a particle. Flew over. Here I'm providing Danny03 and Danny01 slot. Let's take a look. Dummy slots are just 0 dummy slots are this. The second one, right? This right slot is based on this
Overall, this point should actually be called the root point. I clearly changed it to root. At the time, it was called root below because the name wasn't changed when importing before. A fixed point was created based on root because this point is always stationary. So we can set its position well and then copy the second one. Ink splashes second -0, this one, then scan over. We believe everyone should know how to position themselves. Just take some time to stack everything right. One is the location and the other is the time of appearance. You must check it yourself.
This
Actually,
the rhythm seems a bit off, right?
There's also a problem with the dissolution earlier. It went wrong. We will open the material at the dissolve place in front and select to activate the solution because we just gave the switch. This way, wrong again.
Why wasn't it working?
Then talk about this one.
For the particles along the slashes tangent, we've already addressed that here. You can hang some animation on me. At first, when I was talking about Max, I had already mentioned it to him. For example, does this come up like this? There's an animation. And it's the path animation we have in Max Key. We just need to add the corresponding particles to it. So this particle is also very simple. We create a particle system. Ink dots. Very simple. I'll just demonstrate. Let everyone have a look at the previous one because it's very simple. A particle keeps emitting at this angle. And you can just pick any small dot texture for the emitting particles, then directly launch. Make sure to agree on the locked speed direction during the direct launch period. Then the key thing is this speed direction. The principal opening direction made a point 1.1, roughly like this for opening. The corresponding speed is random. The default direction given is E, which is the direction of Z. Do we still remember the Z-axis? In Max, how this hangs. He directed his... In the Z-axis direction, this is the Z-axis. This is our trajectory line. And then, remember there is an X-axis, right? The X-axis. This is the Z-axis, this is the X-axis. Then I gave a 1 here, and a 0.5 offset there. This means the direction of the particle swing has changed to this direction. It's not 45 degrees, it should be more inclined towards this axis because the ratio given by the z-axis is 1. The x-axis is just 0.5. If both are given 1 for the x-axis, then it's 45 degrees. If it's 0.5, then it's 45 plus 1, leaning more towards this. So in this way, I feel my particles are thrown out with a certain angle. That's the idea. Then add these ink dots to it. Add a notification. At this time, we can use the time particle effect. Region specific. So for Google, I think it should be level 5. The first point should be level 5. P1, P2, P3, P4 are fixed. P5, P6, P7, P8. P8, the 4 behind are moving. P5, you see hanging on the P5 spot. Wait.
5. Then take a look. It swings, right? Just like this. It's about swinging in the direction of its tangent. So if you want to do this, not only ink wash, but in the future, some other energies that are thrown out, this method can be applied to all. For example, the flames thrown in Dark Souls are done using this method. Also, there are padlock moves and other textures that are like this. As long as you want to form such a structure, the shape can be created using this method. And then let me talk about the third item, the jump part. 1, 2, 3. The third strike is not there, a poked up one. Let me talk about this structure. So for this part, it's primarily about the splashing ink dots. The ink dots of jetting. These dots are actually a simple texture. Let me show you. That's the chart I showed everyone just now. Using this chart as an example to demonstrate the effect. Okay, I will do a simple demonstration here. Actually, these things are not too difficult. As long as everyone grasps the theoretical knowledge and production ideas mentioned earlier, making things afterwards will be naturally. Create a new particle system for ink wash and crush. Actually, you can just copy this over. It's faster that way. You need to go faster. For this part, let's make the texture of this spray part vertical upwards, then placed into the corresponding hanging point, letting it face its own direction. So let's lock the support coordinates for it. Launch 1, lifeline 1, then size, we'll adjust it later. Let's work on this material first. Heat a carrot. The material is very simple. Let me show everyone. This material is really simple. Just this one based on the newly created material ball for Johnson. But here, the UV redundancy given to it is a bit higher on this side. Good bay. Alright, let's start by taking it over here. Then there's a beveled edge treatment here. Due to the tangency with the ground, I'll just move this material over directly, drag him out, and now I'm making it lock the speed direction, giving an upward speed. No need for other directions, just a bit of upward velocity, a little over 10 will do. Let me check. This lets me see it. For this part, we'll work on the texture of this spray component. Move it vertically upwards, then place it inside the corresponding hanger, allowing it to face its own direction. So we lock its own coordinates on our side. And then as for the dimensions, we'll adjust those later. Let's work on this material first. Material. The material is very straight for water. Let me show you. This material is very simple. Just like the material discussed today. The material ball is just like this. Simply put, the UV protection level provided here is a bit higher. Oh, goodbye. Okay, we'll first bring it over here. And there's another one on this side, because it would be tangent to the ground. So there needs to be one. You trod the edge. Sleepy. I'll just transfer this material over directly.
Drag him out. And
Now I make it lock the direction of speed. I give an upward speed. No need for other directions. Just a bit of upward speed. 10 should do. Let me check. Let me see it again. Seems like the orientation of the example is not quite right now.
yes.
We can rotate it by a given initial angle. For instance, rotate by 0.25, that's 45 degrees. This should be changed back. We still use mode that is being held. And then, well,
Adjust the aspect ratio.
change the color to black. Start with alpha 1 a bit higher, let it rise some more, and then we'll give it a reserved seat. Now if you look from above, it will look like this. So we have to give an orientation that is lock its axis, lock it, looking at it this way according to this rotation. It's okay, right? And then we can make it the special effect. Let's mount it on our corresponding
Action wise.
Let's look at the previous one again. Let's just use this, the jump off point, then add such an effect notification. I'll create a new slot point. For example, it's called
With
roar. Come over. The position isn't quite right. Let's move it a bit. Turn the angle. Check from multiple angles. Probably set it up like this, then add on other parts other than the splashing part. There's another, this part, it might be a bit hard to see clearly. Could you look again? What part is being cut? Let me show you the sequence that was prepared earlier. Go down. See that It vanished quickly, especially from this angle. This section with three ink strokes brought up together. So this part actually also uses a model. So this part of the model is also quite simple. Let me show you. I just modeled this. It also uses this ballpoint structure. Then remove the two surfaces above. Or use FFD to remove the one or two surfaces above. Or use FD. Use this middle controller to widen it. Feels more like something akin to a tire. Let me explain the material to you once more. What's the material like? Just learn. In terms of material, it's the common template we've talked about before. You just need to go inside and replace the material directly. Replace materials, for instance, specifying a texture here. Adjust the UV repeat rate. Don't think about dissolving here. I haven't checked whether to start dissolving. Activate the dissolution. And then there are too many of these. Close some. Then let me show you this example. It's very simple. We won't repeat and waste time demonstrating here, since the concepts have all just been covered. It's just about showing everyone a rough idea of the small differences. Good. This is one of them. Tilt it a bit. Remember the model I mentioned earlier? The one that's applied to the side of the model, the side of the domain model, and then with a dissolve. Basically, for this structure, we directly copy the adjusted knife light and replace the model material. The material, as we discussed, is the same, and then just change the texture here. These UV repetitions above need adjusting. Tweak them till they're right. Then, on the color side, we can have a gradient of this color. First is a bright blue. That everyone calls this ink painting. When making this, I suggest everyone go for a gradient fill. Really don't want you all to end up with something that's just completely black, because I think in terms of aesthetics, a completely black and white, very plain thing is very appealing compared to another one. Dyeing a bit of color on this black and white base gives a distinctly different feeling. It will make this one feel. Let's make it more textured, okay? Especially this color. I hope everyone can bring it out. Then how are the others done to be like a claw mark, open all around? How to do this? We can, let me tell you a method. If you want to integrate all three together, then let's adjust this mesh rotation here. If you look here, give it a little bit of rotation value on its y-axis. 0 is the maximum increase, and then the left and right. The left with a slight 0.05 angle rotation. Another one is also loaded with 0.05. If I classify it as 0, what does it look like? It means they are side by side, right? Mainly, the main part is this. And at the same time, you can make a slight location shift. It's quite simple, isn't it? Thank you. Hope everyone can make a different feeling. So the focus here is emphasized on the part that we're dialing up, the part we're adjusting.
That we
Quick push.
and up.
And then for this part where I back off, I've cut it out already, okay? I've already addressed the part I mentioned earlier.
Matched it up.
then we look at what's missing. We're still missing this part. Something has been dialed up on the ground, right? And then there needs to be something on the ground, like this, sticking to the ground and exploding. Such a blast point needs the rhythm of the ground exploding to be emphasized.
I
add this part.
together.
Some wooden bits explode and then fall down. I'll add this part. Similarly, let me analyze the structure of this part for everyone. This part must be included. This it, because what you're emphasizing is this ink-like feel coming up from below. A blast point, see it exploding.
It's a section like this.
And here I've created a feeling of direction, a sense of inclination. It's like finding a texture and then creating this kind of feeling, with the bottom being all directions. Explode outward in such a structure. And then at the beginning, just for a moment, before the dark color appears below, we first illuminate a structure like this. A layer of bright luster. This luster is necessary. We need to emphasize this striking sensation, this rhythm. We must highlight this bright aspect. First it's bright, then the dark parts follow. If not, then your overall special effects will seem very dull. If the ink painting effect is done in a very stuffy way, it feels like, relatively speaking, the expressiveness is not enough. It's not that ink effects are just black, but
It's without light.
well, likewise, you can add the part with light, good range shot. Starting up is what I initially discussed with everyone in AE. That we can work with materials. Find some starting materials to create sequential images. Get this sequence image done, and then give one of these things. It's about to start.
After it's given,
And we've talked about the rest before. Here we need to set up a linear blend. What I had earlier was 8 times 4. Very much like 8. The number is 4, right? And then adjust the color size a bit and the color gradient. Here, I am completely in the dark because it just lays down a base layer to add a sense of rhythm that unfolds subtly. Then give it a random angle every time. The angle of appearance truly varies. Although this texture of his is also a bit like expanding, we can also add a little bit more to it. I am not bigger yet. Like this, if it's just an example like square, if it's a centered square pattern, then for tuning, we just need to adjust the first one. Signed by Live. It's the same here. Below is this thin sequence of needles. 48, 48, how much? 432. Calculate it, then give one here to let it go through the sequence. This is very simple. And because I've stacked another layer here, stacked more. So it's that ink dot on the knife in front. Just copy it over and adjust its particle motion state like this. The more we do later, the faster it becomes. That is to say, when we're doing these special effects, the first sort out usually takes more time because you have to adjust its rhythm, its overall material. After all the templates are prepared in advance, then we start filling things in. It's just changing the pace, switching up the way of departure. Then based on one cylindrical launchers, let's review. This is its radius. Comment on radius. The radius of the cylinder. This refers to the height of the cylinder. Then I can also give a launch speed based on the sphere itself. After turning it off, it looks like this. And it's opened. It will emit particles within this structure based on its original form. Tick to the ground, snap very fast. This is to emphasize the rhythm. So this layer of texture, let me show you, is this picture. This picture is actually from the game Ghost of Tsushima 4. A very high quality texture. A tried and true image. Also very simple. The material is also very simple. And over here there's a lock axis. If it's not there, it stands upright. After hooking it, I can make it stick to the ground. This creates a force that pushes outward from the ground. This explosion point is what I emphasized earlier. The material textures are the same. It's just that their movement speed and direction are different. But I gave it one. The direction of velocity along the x-axis and z-axis would result in a slanted trajectory when notched. dt
It's still
between the x-axis and z-axis, right? Of course, nothing much. The time burst point is what I mentioned, where we are in this burst point. At 1, there shouldn't be anything without light movement here. If there is no light movement, then just like this. To make it look smoother, we can add a layer of halo. You can compare and see. Then, at the peak moment of time, if it's the peak moment of time, you can add a light below. Include a built-in particle light. Okay, setting up the explosion point is simple. So I'll configure that accordingly. Okay, add this here. Add it in. And then the point of the slot is this. We create a new slot point ourselves. Then check its approximate position. This way, there is aligning creates a highlight, right? And then aligning this part is almost done.
Okay.
Let me explain. One is the smoke continuously produced on the person's body. There's also the after image of a character's movement before the final explosion. Let me mention this thing to everyone. It's about an aspect of the character, the smoke. Then it involves a point of knowledge. How in this example is it based on the character? It's not Google. It's a grid point on a person or their face. The Google model generated these examples. And then I'm going to demonstrate it. First, let's take a look at this adjusted smoke. The smoke is rather simple. This kind doesn't need to be repeated. Let's talk about it then. The material of the smoke we have already used in the last lesson is exactly this material. Then the sub-UV sequence is used, right? Then adjust its color. For the color, please start with the hue a little bit. Give it this dark green. And then meeting till dark. Here we can set up a loop emission, and then the most crucial thing is this item. Scaling, vertices, surfaces, and positions are crucial. I chose based on its model to create examples based on the model surface. This example must be dragged into the scene. It's not about Google, not the Google we were just talking about. In the model, it's stuck. I'll pause for now. Let's look at this example again. Over here we need to give him a name just like this. Just say any name, and here you must assign your mesh model. Make sure to duplicate it. The mode we just selected above surface, right? And then you drag this example into the scene. Make sure to drag it onto the field, not because of... It's not like before hanging on his sequence of actions, and then we're here choosing an example. In this example, add to this instance parameter. Say goodbye, and then what you just give the secret name, and then you must choose actor mode. Select the actor, and then we must identify who is in this scene and attach them.
Leaning over and tapping.
This way, when I drag it over, we find that this particle is on the person, right? Continue emitting particles from the surface of the character model. Okay, and then at this point, we realize he has been following along and generating this example all along, right? Then we can let it, controlling when it appears and when it disappears. Add this water vapor smoke, and then add a particle's trajectory. Choose the additive.
It starts, then...
Deactivate means to end, which implies it appears during this period and there's nothing following. Right, that's the idea.
And then get the type.
Can't exceed the initial timeline. Okay, very simple, isn't it? Yes, very simple. And then add that person's talent. How do you add a human afterimage? The human afterimage looks like this. This part is the prepared blueprint. It generated from a blueprint. As for how it's implemented, I won't go into detail here, not mentioning it for now, as it's relatively complex. And then this is the material is the after image of the character. Alright, you drag out what material it is made of, and then how to use it. We'll talk about how to use this thing. As for how to use it, it's quite simple. First we pick your character. After selecting, add a component here in this area. Okay, it's ghost trap per ghost trap. Add this component in. After adding it in,
I was originally like this.
Let me explain this to you. This is tick by default, meaning once you start pressing play, it begins generating this after image, and then it's about delay, which means the density of your after image. Are you this dense, or so to say? Then the one below is lifetime, which means how long this after image exists. Omesh means if my model is divided into many material IDs. When you select Omesh, it treats the entire body as a single unit. Let me give you a deep footprint. Below is the label added. And then this is the after image material of the pointer I just opened. So with that, we can go. Fade is a single mistake curve. Fade is a variable right here. What we have is its opacity, so to speak. We can control its opacity. If you don't provide the curve here, it will follow the
views
default.
expressed do not represent the position of the
Not
station.
directly like this, fading out in a straight rhythm. I can tell everyone about this curve. The curve is very simple. We create it with a right click, and under other there's a curve, see? Then it lets you choose between a floating point curve, a color curve, or that one. It's a curve of the three axes, X, Y, Z. Actually, our fade out curve is just like a floating point. value, right? We use this for signing it can then lead to the curve. Only then can it lead out the curve, and then throw it over here. Then we can add keyframes here. Hold shift and left click to add a keyframe, then hold shift and left click again. From 0 to 1, this is a single piece. Then you can add another one. Select all the frames, click auto, and they turn into curves. Below, this is the size, the same. Skip the usual, not needed. Then there's this thing below. The most crucial is this. What does this mean? It's said to be a dual launch threshold. How should I put it? Just say it's you. Right. It has a continuous line now. The baseline you're querying is 0. As long as this object, the actor, moves a bit in the scenes now. If there's a bit of displacement, it means now he has gained speed. If his speed is greater than 1, then I judge that. If the speed is greater than 1, then it starts generating on this, starting to generate after images above. If this actor don't move in the scene, then he thinks if it equals 0, then it generates nothing. It doesn't generate if it's less than 1, right? So I can give it a little, say 0.1. Give a copy, right? It should be like this. Giving a copy means I am just me. Standing still, not moving at all, I can also participate. Understand this. So if that's the case, let me show you all something. Then you definitely have to hit play afterwards. Only then will after images be produced, right? So when I hit play, I need to give it a command to start playing my just mentioned level sequence. But this thing, let it start playing this thing after you hit play. Because the logic of the blueprint must be in action. Press play. And then these calculations will begin. The blue head works like this. It only takes effect after playing. He wrote some events in the blueprint. You know, I'll take care of this side. At command here in the blueprint, this button opens up the level blueprint because the playback is based on the level blueprint. Open this editor. This is a new module. Then not hard. Let's start. Decides a word. What's the event? I hope that after I press play, when I press the 1 key on my keyboard, I'm about to press this button to execute a command. What command? That is first create a live squares player. First thing is to use a player like the one for levels quest. You must have a player to play that thing. Then which one do you want to play?
Opening it lets me choose what I want to play. This one, I've decided on a sequence for this label. Play a file by specifying such a configuration file. Once you've decided, then execute a play command here and then start playing. Who is the target? Who he targets, who he asks, who plays. The one who plays is him. It's him, I'm telling you. Alright, this step is done. Just click compile. Okay. Then let's take a look at the playback here. It's faster now, so we can just hide this. Still not, right?
Let me check what's the reason. That's because I just didn't declare a setting here. Set it to 1 and I'll check again. Hey, now there are after images, but the color of this after image is white. White.
I don't know.
I'll continue with what I was saying over here. The material ball of the after image. I've created a purple material ball here. And then for the purple one I gave it this kind of semi-transparent, a deep color. So I'm adjusting the material ball. When you get to this point, you definitely want to choose it. You have to select this module. Then you can apply this texture. After applying, we hit play. So we see the meal A also came up effectively, right? There should be no doubt about this material. Very simple. Let's take another look at the parent metal ball, giving you a thumbs up. In carry the ball mode, pay attention to foresee which variables. That's fine. So far we have already covered the previous part. It's done the first part. Let me remind you that every time we hit play, it's gonna after 1 play. Then every time you have to push it out and click play again, it's inconvenient. So in the blueprint, we can give it a play looping means how many times I want to loop. You can loop a number, for instance. Let's loop it 20 times and then then he started dialing once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, just like that all the way down. Okay, and then you just found out inside the scene, when you refresh, it's like the umbrellas and other effects I threw in the scene earlier. They all start over, playing again. Right, I mean, I've been into this stuff for a long time. It's just something initially used to see the effect. It gets reactivated again, but why is that? This has an auto-activation feature. Once you remove this, after you uncheck this, it won't replay again after playing. He won't play it again, okay? Everyone, please pay attention to this, and then I'll add the camera here. Put it in a camera. Choose general location, setup camera. Once set up, add camera. Okay, camera added. Now add another one. Bring the director in. After inviting the director in, set up the camera position. Then we enter the director's view. And then there's only the last part left. The last part, chop down. After chopping, then this piece of stuff, the piece on the ground. How should you show that you can be in this and this form?
If it were other elements like moving mountains and splitting the earth, then it could create shock waves or surges. For ink wash like ours, I can create an effect of ink wash blossoming. So I use these pieces one by one to piece together from small to large, starting with the smaller ones and gradually getting larger, and then start rebuilding. At the same time, the top is decorated with various interlacing angles of blade light here. One by one, the blade lights flash through. And these blade lights are actually the same as the ones before. It's kind of taken a shortcut, I guess. Actually, regarding this part, I think everyone could think it over and design it carefully, because it's closely related to the previous action and effects, accompanied by actions. So after he smashes down this area, this is up to our visual effects artist, a well-designed part that is essentially a blank slate. This part depends on our designers our special effect designer's own creativity. Let your imagination run wild. Think about how to design this thing, how to make it look good. For example, like the one in Heishan just now after catching someone, then that is the black shark from the last episode we were watching. That girl with the scythe, or like in Fire Eye Ninja, Zhu has a move that descends from the sky, and then there are complicated spikes that thrust up in a complex manner, then pick it up and then start to dissolve. Then our element can be replaced with ink wash, which is the ink wash we just invoked. Splashing like this, everything sprays up, and then there's a dissolve, and so on and so on. Let everyone's imagination run wild. So for the last part, I have a few points to share with you all. Finally, it's a continuous report. This is the continuous report I made, and then move forward. It's about him, this character. After the last batch, start moving forward continuously from here with a clicking sound. Open it. Take a look. Actually, these
This is an
things,
opportunity.
the previous report point. This is a report point followed by a continuous report
Made
format.
a diamond.
So, how to report continuously? It's simple.
Let's kill What are it you first. going to make?
Let's take a look. That's how it is. Let me show you these two first. Right, they have the same rhythm. First, this one on the left. Keep spraying. As for perm, it's about giving one here. Launch at a rate of quantity, and then give how long you maintain. For example, 0.7 seconds. Cycle once below. Okay, and then after that, this side, after adjusting its shape, color and rhythm, we add an event generator to it. Right click here for the event generator. Create a practice generator. Inside the event generator, there's another event generator that creates this event. After it's generated, then we add something here, like a plus sign, to create a new event. What event? Just say it's me. As long as I start spawning means here at the top, starting to produce these particles. This launcher produces particles, so once the condition is met, then I start specify an event name. To start executing a command, the name of the command belongs to the last report point. Okay, then what's the name of the person accepting this event? It's him. Right click, find receive spawn in the event to accept the spawn command. This is an event generator, meaning it generates events. The creator, and then this receiver is the receiver. The creator and receiver must generate and receive this event, this command to be complete. Only then can it be successfully executed. Boss, do I look like a little brother to you? I'm very much your man. And then follow the boss's command, the ink spot command, and then meet the spawn condition. And then the top begins. How many particles are generated? Why is it one here? That is to say, this part above. Every time a particle is generated, it executes a command. Every time a particle is generated, execute once. Then from the front, pop, 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 like this. So the frequency also follows this command. Keep executing it. Each execution is once as well. And then it's the same behind all receiving except the event. Then here is a model with a blur effect.
Keep diffusing.
Let me double click to check out this material. This dissolving material is relatively simple. Similar to the one before. It's just a simplification. We can compare and see. This is its base texture part.
It's the same as above and before. Good. Technical curiosity part. Even more streamlined. And then this part below is the overall dissolution. Overall melting. This is a setting for the dissolution texture. The repetition of U and V. Then what's on top is what I tried earlier. It's a hardware accelerated dissolution method. And just review the previous knowledge points. Okay. And 1 minus x actually means turning black into white and white into black. Just this meaning, if the paper output here is black, then inside here 1 minus black minus 0 equals what? Equals 1, which is the white result. If you reverse the front, just the opposite. That's the idea. 1 to 0 or 1 to 1. Just now it wasn't starting with 0. The first one is always 1. 1 minus this indefinite value. He replaced it with x. Okay, and then connect to different densities. It's a simplified version of the material template I mentioned earlier. I need to mention this again. There's this thing I've talked about in public classes. It's about choosing the UV channel. This thing 0 or 1. Default is 0. But here I've specified 1. Why is it 1? Because the model I've specified has 2. It has 2 channels. 2 UV channels. It has 2 UV channels. I also recommend using models with multiple UV channels, which can be reused. Let me show you all first. The model is just a hemisphere turned into a pancake. Imagine a hemisphere flattened into a pancake. Then noise is added to its model itself. The lines look a bit more random. Or we can pull the points inside to make them more regular. And then take a look at the U channel. Channel 1 produces such an outcome. Assuming channel 0 is like this. Okay, if it's 0, we can lay out a continuous map in all 4 directions. So for 1, I can lay out a texture map for him from the center outward, giving him a mask, just to get an idea. Like with such a mask image, if I assign it to such a UV channel, it will be laid on a model like this, right? What about another quad mesh? Use the UV channel 0. This refers to a square lattice neighbor graph. So here I present an irregular image with a bright center surrounded by darkness. And then the words below are still the previous square connection diagram, identifying this diagram on this side as using its UV channel. The following is 0, referring to UV channel 0. In this case, the model has been used. Only then can such an effect be achieved. It's understandable, right? And then behind that, ink treasure. Add a light and shadow manual to make it brighter. That's what it means. There's this feeling of lighting up. The same principle as the previous spark. Then moving forward, just adding the inkstone because I made the stone burst out. Then it falls to the ground and starts becoming this puddle. The result of running it like ink is another practice, a form of an event. So actually this form is, let's start with an inkstone. The stone part is not difficult. just a simple demonstration. I'll copy this example first as a demonstration. Then I deleted the other irrelevant parts. Alright, just these two left. Let me explain this part to everyone again. First, the stones are sprayed outwards. I've already covered a stone model in the last class. Is to use refill max. One of the pieces taken apart, so its material is also given a simple orange high gloss, just like the material ball on the character. What's next? Keep firing. And yes, as for development, it takes some time, around 0.7. And then, well, the statement can be slightly longer. No need for color change. Size needs a transition from large to small because I've locked the x, y, z below. I didn't assign any values to the two y's and z's that follow. They actually align with the x. So this is the direction of launch. My particle is launched towards the z-axis at this angle. Random size. Then a bit of resistance, a little resistance, and then if there's no gravity, this in space now, it's flown up. Then over here, add a bit of this launching starting position, giving it a bit of this. An original launch then. I just deleted something, that is the initial rotation angle we set. Give an initial int mesh rotation, which is according to the XYZ axis. Each birth angle is different. Actually, whether it's given or not doesn't matter because I'm going to add something later. Come out, this is that one. It all starts with the model's rotational speed. The initial angle is on top. The model, after I decide its initial position, this one is based on that, and then it spins on its own. It might be turning at this angle. Turn at this angle. Okay, turn it timely. Okay, so about this, for example, on this side, give what? 0.2 minus 0.2. This might be a bit slow. We can give it a slightly higher value, like 2 minus 2, all the way through. We can set this ourselves. Okay, then add another collision collection. This is particle collision. Okay, let me emphasize again here. Look now. Now it seems that you can't feel the collision, right? Then we have to set the maximum number of collisions here. Give title 2. Because of him, here's a Q. After the collision, if it was a 1 just now, it kills it immediately after the first collision. In this way, I can't see the part where it pops up, right? If I want to see the part where it pops up, then I have to multiply by 2. So it has a popping part. Give a bit of bounce to the part that pops up. This way, there's an amount that pops up. Then, on this side, we actually don't need to make it pop. Just cue it like this. And then, over here, I have now obtained an collision event. So after such an event, inside the event, add such a pair. Generator events. Generator, we just talked about it. If I have to choose an event, it would be a collision. Once a collision occurs, then for example, I make it execute command number 1. So the receiver comments here. Experiment accepted. There's one more thing to mention, that is, if I need to accept events here, I won't give any examples anymore. Now, if it's given as 1, that is, without accepting events, I can make it happen like this example or like the one above. And once I add an event listener here in this case, so I add a generation rate here, emitting 1, and then win collision 11. Okay, this way we'll get an effect like ink spreading at every point where our particles collide. Then drag this in. Then here, I'll put this example into the sequencer. Then the same, add an example of a trajectory. The final position of P is here. First, addition activated. Then give him a time to explain what said won't happen once at this time. Then to move it forward, we need to add another what in this example. Add a path. Add a what? A path transformation. A path transformation includes rotation, translation, and scaling. Open it in transform. Open a keyframe at this location. Then move forward. Let's add another keyframe so it explodes forward. Just like this. And finally, we just the knife lights that were adjusted before, bring them in one by one. Because in the end, how this part is designed is not limited by me. Feel free to let your imagination run wild. No need to stick strictly to my way. This effect, like if you drag this in and then turn an angle, turn a corner, add some more action with blades and swords, then incorporate it here. Adding a trigger path, we can just use trigger since it's a one-off launch example. For a one-time launch, we use trigger. Say goodbye once. Looks good, right? Just turn it to this point, so I start to turn it once. Then we copy one out, rotate it, add it back in, turn an angle, and then adjust it to look good. Okay? And that's roughly what this lesson covers. Okay, next up then is our finale. After tuning, start import video sequence.